Vice President Kamala Harris is now leaning on Democratic heavyweights and is doing the rounds on friendly media outlets after polls show her slipping in the race against former President Donald Trump. Former President Barack Obama held his first rally for Harris in Pittsburgh last night, and former President Bill Clinton is set to hit the campaign trail this weekend with stops in Georgia on Sunday and Monday and a bus tour next week in North Carolina. Democratic strategists are worrying now that the sugar high is over for her. Harris is also still trying to distance herself from President Biden, saying she's, quote, not Joe Biden, but she's been reluctant to explain how she's not Joe Biden. Trump, meanwhile, is going to be campaigning in some solidly Democratic states in the weeks before the election. He's planning to hold a rally later this month at Madison Square Garden. Joining me now, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. He's also a Fox News contributor and the author of March to the Majority. Newt, good morning to you, and so many questions, but I want to bring up this one thing. This is what James Carville had to say. Quote, I am scared to death. Another Democratic operative, this is Anthony Coley. He worked for Biden and for Obama. He said, now that the sugar high is gone, people have realized what Kamala Harris has said from the beginning. She is the underdog.
Well, that's certainly true. I actually think having Obama and Clinton on the trail weakens her because they were real presidents. And the stature gap between how inadequate she is, you know, you have hurricanes, tornadoes, as we just saw in the report. You have wars in the Middle East and in Ukraine. You have Venezuelan criminal gangs crossing our open borders. That's a dangerous world. And people are going to want a strong leader in a dangerous world. And she comes across as weak and confused. And frankly, you stand her up next to Barack Obama or Bill Clinton, she looks like, if you said, which of these three is not a president? Everybody would pick her. And I think, in a sense, having to bring them out, having them trying to prop her up, actually it will end up, by the end of the campaign, weakening her, because it will remind people she can't do the job. She's just not capable. Well,
I mean, I think it's interesting that they're sending, because this all just got announced yesterday, that they're sending Bill Clinton to the rural South, and he's going to Georgia. Does that mean that they're nervous about Georgia?
Well, sure. I mean, the last poll I saw in Georgia, Trump's now up by 5. And I sat through a terrific briefing that Mark Halpern put on last night, where experts walk through registration numbers. And in every one of these swing states, the registration has shifted towards the Republicans. There are more people registering as Republicans. There are people switching from Democrat to Republican. I think you'd have to be out of touch with reality not to be really worried if you're a Harris supporter. And Trump is just methodically communicating what he has already accomplished. I mean, if you're worried about a dangerous world, you have a candidate who's already been president for 4 years, who knows what he's doing, and who feels like a tough guy, because he is a tough guy. And you say to yourself, which experience do I like better? Do you like the prices under Trump or under Biden and Harris? Do you like the border under Trump or under Biden and Harris? Go down a whole list. And on every one of these achievement levels, Trump is now winning. And I think it's very interesting that he's going both to California and to Madison Square Garden in a way that really is a signal of broadening the race that's very unusual at this stage and very much like Reagan in 1980.
And why do you say that?
Well, in 1980, Reagan looked like it was going to be a really close race until mid-October. It broke wide open, and all of a sudden, Reagan won the biggest electoral college victory against an incumbent president in American history. No one could have predicted that on October 1st. But people looked up, and it's going to be a very simple test. You really want 4 more years of this? Vote Harris. You really want to go back to how things were, having lower prices, having a safer country, having the world be more stable? You vote for Donald Trump. If that settles in, and I think it will, plus there's an amazing anti-Catholic mood building among the Democrats. I mean, Governor Whitmer having a fake mass with a radical. I saw these pictures and I thought, this is insane. So you have, and by the way, Catholics are about a quarter of the vote in every one of the swing states. And it's increasingly obvious that the Democrats have become the anti-Catholic party. So there are a lot of things going on, almost all of them favoring Trump. And I suspect you'll see by the end of next week, you'll see Kamala Harris panicking and the Democrats panicking. I've always admired James Carville. He's a smart guy. We used to do a lot of speeches together. He's a lot of fun. And he's right. He ought to be scared to death because he's about to watch Donald Trump get inaugurated.
Well, and he was one of the first and the loudest Democrat voices to say that Joe Biden needed to drop out of the race. And he did. And it was James Carville that really kicked off that discussion. Let's talk about the swing states. I want to get your take on these numbers because it's going to come down to numbers. We've got conflicting results, just 25 days out. The Wall Street Journal poll that just came out this morning has Harris with a slim lead in Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Trump has a narrow edge in Nevada, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. A new Quinnipiac poll finds Harris leads Trump in Pennsylvania, while Trump has the edge in Michigan and Wisconsin. Newt, each poll right now is showing dramatically different results. We're seeing polls that show traditional Democratic voting blocs like blue-collar workers, union members going to Trump. Do you think that this is going to really be a replay of 2016 at the end of the day?
No, I think it'll be a much bigger margin for Trump. And I frankly think those polls are just wrong. The Trump campaign's internal polls show him carrying every one of the swing states. And they've released them, so it's not secret. The fact is, registration is moving very heavily towards Trump. You look at a state like Pennsylvania, the Republicans have cut the Democratic registration lead dramatically. And the fact is, what you're seeing happen is Latinos are moving towards Trump. Black males, not black females, but black males are beginning to move towards Trump. He may get 25 or 30% of the black male vote, which is catastrophic if you're a Democrat. Working wise, people who work at a job, who are in an industry, like for example, are overwhelmingly for Trump. The Teamsters showed Trump way ahead, 25, 30 points ahead among Teamster members. Those are disastrous numbers if you're a Democrat. But imagine, you're a Teamster, you drive a truck, you watch the price of gasoline and diesel fuel. You look at Kamala Harris, you know she's against you. You know that she basically wants to put you out of work. And then she lives in some green fantasy world. So I think all of these things are compounding. I'll be very surprised if Trump doesn't carry all 7 of those states. And I think places like Virginia and New Hampshire are beginning to come in play. And I think in places like New York and California, the reason he's doing these events is there are a number of Republican congressional seats at stake, and he's going to, I think, increase the turnout in their districts and help reelect a whole bunch of House members.
That's an interesting take. Jonathan Fahey and I were just talking about that in the commercial break. Before you go, I want to ask you a question about, you discussed the demographics, but what about the age component in all of this? Those younger voters, traditionally younger voters, don't come out to vote. Maybe when Barack Obama ran, you could maybe use that example. What is your take now? Because what's new in this election is the social media push, whether it's TikTok or it's Instagram, and that has been a big focus of the Harris campaign. So they may have fans amongst the 20 to 25-year-old, base, the TikTok user, but does that person actually go out and vote at the end of the day? And I ask you as somebody that has covered so many elections in your time.
Well, look, I think, first of all, young males are becoming dramatically more conservative. That's been a surprise to me, but it's clear that's happening. Second, I think that it's important to remember, Barack Obama drew people out because they liked him, because he was a symbol. He was the first African-American president. So people said, I'm excited. Sometimes you can get people to come out of fear. I don't believe younger voters fear Donald Trump. And I don't think they're particularly excited about Kamala Harris. So I suspect that she's going to have a much harder time getting her vote out than Trump will.
Well, Newt Gingrich, thank you so much for being here. It's incredible to say 25 days to go. It's always great to speak with you about this, Newt. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you soon. We'll be right back, everybody.